Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to talk about film or film adjacent topics, as is the case this week on the Movie Bears podcast. A few years back, we got a chance to review a little film called Snowpiercer, which we all liked quite a bit. And on last week's episode, one of our listeners suggested, hey, Movie Bears, since you reviewed the movie, you should review the first couple episodes of the new TNT Snowpiercer series, which is a prequel question mark, reboot question mark. I don't know that we even totally know yet. But it was a great suggestion because there aren't a lot of new movies coming out right now. And we are going to dive into those first two episodes. We'll talk a little bit about the series compared to the film. If you haven't seen either, that's okay. We're going to talk about things spoiler free before we kick into spoiler count. So fret not, but welcome and glad to have you with us. I'd also like to welcome my two co-hosts. I literally couldn't do this show without, because there's no way I'd be entertaining enough to watch for an hour by myself. So thank God Jim Pugliafico is in the studio. Hey, sweetheart, how's it going?
It's going good. It always feels good to get done with work for the day, even though I'm working at home, and jump into the show with you guys and talk about what's going on in movies and movie adjacent stuff like we have this week. So I'm here for it. I'm excited. Can't wait to get into it with you guys. And welcome to anyone else who's been able to join us on the live show. This will be fun.
I agree. Definitely looking forward to the conversation. And thank goodness as well that Will Lindis is here, because Will, I know you were very fond of the original film, if I remember correctly. I'm dying to know your thoughts. Jim and I talked a little bit about the show, but I think we kind of saved most of it for the show so we could get into it with you. But before we do, how the heck are you?
Hey, Tailies and Brakeman. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about this one. Yeah, like you mentioned, I was a big fan of the movie. That this is a reboot, prequel, alternate reality, whatever. We'll talk about that. But so when our listener last week said to do the show, like to try the show and do the first couple of episodes, bolt of genius. I'm really glad that we got a chance to do this. And yeah, I think setting up today's show, the three of us intentionally kept our conversation super vague. Like, I can't wait to talk about how you felt about it. You know, like I have no, like, this could be your favorite show of the year or the worst thing you've ever seen, or literally anywhere in between. I have no read on it yet, and I'm excited to find out in real time.
Oh, well. Yeah. We're also excited to find out how you felt about it, Will.
Yeah.
Since we've all kind of kept our feelings about it pretty close to ourselves until now. It's going to be interesting to see how we all feel about it. And maybe other people will tell us how they feel about it too.
Indeed. If you are joining us live, first, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Don't forget to say hello in the live chat and feel free to share your thoughts throughout the episode. And if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you access your podcasts, you can be part of the conversation, even though it's a few days, few weeks, who knows, maybe a few years since we recorded this episode relative to when you're listening. Feel free to find us on Facebook or Twitter. Just search for Movie Bears Podcast. Send us a message. Leave a comment. If you really want to talk Snowpiercer, we're up for it. So feel free. Speaking of which, Jim, Will, are you guys ready to go out into the cold, as it were, all aboard the train, choo-choo, and talk about this new show?
I'm ready to pierce this subject. That's not a good one, but it's kind of what I had. Like, I don't feel proud of that one.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that particular pun could have been snowbanked for later. No, that wasn't.
No, we're not quite there yet. I mean, don't worry, we've got a whole episode.
Guys, can we get the show on track? Can we get the show on track,
please? Okay, Jim. Yeah, all right.
Okay, that was
I'll take it.
Decent. We'll give
All
you
right.
extra credit because you're an engineer.
I am.
Okay, we're done fooling around. Here we go. Our discussion of Snowpiercer, the series. All right, so we're going to talk about this series as well as probably the movie from a few years ago. Spoiler free for a little bit, and then we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers for the series and the previous movie, perhaps. But Jim, I think you were pretty fond of the original film too, of course, which
Yeah.
starred Chris Evans. When this idea came up last week, you kind of latched onto it. You were like, "Yeah, let's check this out." I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts on Snowpiercer the series? Does it stack up against the movie for you? Do you even compare them? Do you keep them separate? What did you think?
Well, we'll get to my opinion on the series pretty quick, but I just want to kind of set things up for everybody. So, what we're talking about here is a new series, a new TV series produced by TNT and available on other VOD outlets, named Snowpiercer, and it's basically a retelling of the same story that Bong Joon-ho gave us a film about. And this was like, guys, get this, 6 years ago now, as far as I can tell.
What? Really?
Like, yeah, 2014. That's what I'm
I was
seeing.
thinking 3
And
tops. Wow.
I know, but I know, right? It doesn't. It's weird, or maybe it's just me, but that's when it was released in the U.S. Now, maybe we had a little delay before we saw it, but certainly not a couple years. I mean, we saw this probably at the end of near the end of 2014. I have to go back, but yeah, I remember really digging the Bong Joon-ho's film Snowpiercer. I had seen other Bong Joon-ho films. I loved The Host was one that I really, really still like, and I want to go back and watch it. It's one of those. It's kind of like a semi kaiju movie, so I think that's why it's got a fondness in my heart. But this Snowpiercer is a little bit different, and we'll talk about the differences between the series and the film, as well as how we, our opinions of it. But basically, what Snowpiercer is about, it's a post-apocalyptic story set in sometime in the future when man has got to the point in global warming where they decided to try to do something about the weather and kind of cool off the planet. Well, guess what? Things went wrong. They went a little too far, and now the planet is a giant block of snow and ice, and nobody can survive in the world. There's no food, so everybody who's left alive from this cataclysmic Earth freezing event is now on this train that's a perpetual moving train that just keeps circumnavigating the frozen areas of the world. I think it basically circumnavigates the globe. And on this train are all the survivors in the world that are left. And so the story is about the train is set up so that the first class, it's kind of a class social commentary about classism, where like the well-to-dos are in the front of the train and the quote unquote lower class are in the back of the train. And there's elements of social injustice, survival, fairness. It's all played in here. This series stars in the lead role Daveed Diggs, who I really like this guy as an actor. He really opened my eyes in a movie called Blind Spotting from last year, or I think 2 years ago, which was a fantastic role and a great performance. If you get to see Blind Spotting, please see it. Also, Jennifer Connelly is in this one, as well as some other folks who we may recognize. So that's Snowpiercer the series. We'll compare and contrast it to the movie, but I think in general, I'm watching it, this thing, and they've taken something that we saw a complete story of in probably a little bit under 2 hours, and now they've made it this. I don't know how many parts this thing is. 8, 10. Anybody know how many episodes are in this? And this is just the
season
first.
is 20 episodes. Yeah.
Whoa. So you have 20, and they're like 45 minutes long, I assume. So they've totally stretched this out into some indefinitely long thing. And I don't know if I'm digging that. I think they've added some elements to the plot, and we'll talk about those. I don't want to spoil anything. They've certainly added some elements to the plot, other than kind of the propulsive plot of the movie, which is basically an uprising from the rear of the train to the front of the train. That's not a spoiler. That is an element of this film, but there's a lot of other things going on. I don't know. It feels to me, the show feels fine for people who want to maybe go back into that world and maybe explore it a lot more, because there's a lot more room and time to look at it. But it just feels duller to me. The whole thing feels a little bit duller on the edges, not as compelling. So yeah, I just think, unless you're a super fan of the movie, which I am, and you really want to be thrown into like 20 more hours of this world, I'm not sure this show offers a lot more. I think it's a well done show. I think effects are great. I think the acting is top notch. But to take a story that's, under 2 hours long and stretch it into God knows how many seasons, and then add on layers of plot stories that I'm not sure are as interesting as what was in the movie, I don't know if this stacks up for me, and I'm still on the fence as to whether I'm going to finish this season. Remember, now we've only seen two episodes so far. I don't know if any of us have gone beyond that. I haven't. But yeah, I think it's just a little bit duller for me, and it's gonna probably take a big what's the word for when you have a gap in your viewing thing? It's going to take a huge show hole for me to appear for me to jump back on this train and finish at least season 1. So, but I'm interested to hear what you guys thought of it. I've talked long enough.
All right. Well, thank you for those initial thoughts, Jim. Will, how about for you? How'd you feel?
So this is a pretty interesting case study, right? Because this is not just an adaptation of a movie, but this is an adaptation of a movie, which is an adaptation of a 4 graphic novel series that spans like 3 decades of release. Like, these were originally a set of comic books by Jacques Loeb and Jean-Marc Rochet, a French graphic novel team back in the 80s. And then other comic book like the distributors, Titan Comics, took that and have sort of like kept serializing it from there. So I'm less worried about the amount of story they have to wring out of this, because the source material runs very, very deep. That said, this is not necessarily an adaptation of the graphic novel. This is an adaptation of the adaptation, the Bong Joon-ho film, right? Because that DNA, that texture, the tone, all of the different things that he brought to that 2013 film all live in the DNA of this series. So that's an interesting case study for me to begin with, just sort of like thinking about this one comic book has spawned a whole franchise in a way that like not a lot of kind of indie dystopian comics tend to do. But do I end up liking this the series? I actually came up way more positive on it myself, like to the point where I bought the after those first 2 episodes, I had to force myself to stop. I wanted to go right into the third one, but like, we're only talking about the 2. I don't want to like accidentally give away some like information from episode 5 if I get ahead or something like that. So I bought the rest of the series, even though I think I'm like 6 episodes are out now, but I just bought the season and plan to keep up with it. I think the film is a stronger piece altogether. I don't know that that's necessarily a knock against the show for me. Again, Bong Joon-ho is probably one of the best filmmakers of this generation. So for something to not be as good as one of the best filmmakers of this generation, isn't necessarily like the biggest sin in the world. Daveed Diggs, you're absolutely right. He is just one of those guys who right now, when he shows up in a thing, I pay attention to it. He blew me away in Hamilton, in Blind Spotting. I've seen him show up in just little things. Like there was that movie about that child prodigy called Wonder from a few years ago, and he's just the teacher in that. It's not a great movie, but we're sitting there watching it going like, oh, but with the teacher's back on, because we just love him so much here in this house.
The teacher was cool. Yeah.
We stand hard. Jennifer Connelly is really good in this. And there's another actress in this who I'm not super familiar with. I need to look her up more. Mickey Sumner. She plays Brakeman Till, the cop that's assigned to go around with the Daveed Diggs character. And I'm very interested in her. I know she was in Frances Ha, which I liked, but and she kind of comes from that sort of like Greta Noah family of filmmakers, but I don't know much more about her, and I want to know more about her because I'm very compelled by her so far. Yeah, I'm gonna keep watching this. Look, we just came off of probably the best adaptation of a comic book to ever make it to series, and that's the Watchmen series from last year. And more than anything, I'm comparing this probably unfairly to Watchmen. I'm looking at like an adaptation and thinking like, I'm not like immediately watching videos and striking up conversations with everybody I know about Snowpiercer the way I was with Watchmen. But I am compelled enough to go back. This is a good, solid watch. I put this probably in like the B+ category. It's not going to burn the house down, but it's going to keep me coming back for more.
All right. So we've got a not so much recommend from you, Jim. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And we've got a quasi recommend, pretty decent start.
Yeah, recommend for me. Yeah.
Okay. So, gosh, coming in for me, it's interesting. Jim and I were having a discussion last night. I know this is the Movie Bears podcast, but I tend to prefer TV shows as my primary form of like modern digital, media, entertainment, whatever. And one of the reasons for that is with a TV show with 10 episodes, 13 episodes, 20 episodes, whatever, you have more time to flesh out the plot, to get to know the characters more, to do more world building. That can be a blessing or a curse. Some TV shows take all that time and just use a ton of filler, and they waste it, and it's an awful show. Some shows take that time and do too much exposition and too much world building, and you never find the throughput thread of the show. With a movie, it's all like Jim, you mentioned earlier, it's kind of self-contained in that 2 hours. You only have 2 hours to get all these things done and have your great plot and, done. So coming into this series, I'm kind of like, well, having seen a 2-hour Snowpiercer movie where I know the plot from beginning to end, is this show going to replicate that? Is this a prequel? I didn't really know, but I was like, I really wanted more of the Snowpiercer world. I wanted to find out what happened to the planet. I wanted to find out, like, there's 1,001 cars in this train. What's in car 705? The movie didn't really have time to delve into a lot of those things. And so far, 2 episodes into this show, without going into spoilers, I mean, we've seen several different cars and what's in them. We've gotten some information about what's happened to the world, even more so than we got in the movie at some points. And so it's making me happy, guys. I know that's probably weird to say, but like it's taking that itch that the Snowpiercer film scratched, and now it's like giving me a whole like full body, back and butt massage, and I'm down for it. I definitely want to continue watching this series. I liked it quite a bit. Daveed Diggs isn't really someone that I was aware of or knew from anything. I didn't see The Teacher. I haven't seen Hamilton. I really, really, and this is not a pun, but I really dig Daveed Diggs in this role. And Jennifer Connelly, I mean, I have loved her forever. And it's really interesting to see her as sort of the head of the train. She's the voice of the train. She seems to be in charge of, the first class, staff. but she seems like an intriguing character. I think there's more to her than meets the eye, and so um, I'm I'm recommending this one. And I would say, especially right now in quarantine, if you're looking for something to watch and you feel like the world's over, I don't know, maybe watching a TV show about the world being over may not be the best idea, but at least so far it's gripping, it's engaging, it's doing some really interesting world building. And also the effects. I mean, I realize it's just a train going through, snow and ice. But the effects are really fucking good for a TNT TV show. Like I'm actually pretty surprised by that. So, Will, I don't know if I'm quite as positive on it as you are, Jim. I'm definitely not as down on it as you are. So I guess I'm kind of sandwiched in the middle between you two, which is a great place to be. But I'm definitely anxious to get into spoilers when we do that in a few minutes. Good stuff.
Okay.
You hit on the world building, Brad, and I think that's the thing that was really the litmus test coming into this on whether or not I would enjoy this show. Because if it was just going to be a retelling of Snowpiercer the movie but long, then I was not interested in that, because I've already seen a hyper edited version of that in the 2-hour movie. So coming into this, my expectation is, look, I want to find out what life is like on the train, whatever that story may be. Whether it be like finding out what happens at the back of the train, what happens in this type of cart, there's this class system that is set up as part of the movie and is a big part of the show. And I just wanted to see that explored in whichever way the writers found most compelling. And to me, what I like so much is I'm getting that. I'm getting to see all the different castes and the classes. And because there's more room for the show to breathe, I'm getting to see some more of those details, like you mentioned, Brad. Like, we get to see a little bit more of like what happens, what happens when a character moves from one cart to another. Like, sometimes that ends very, very well for people, and then sometimes not as well at all. And right now there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the news about basically class, case, race, all of those different things are all happening in real time. And what I also like about this show is this lets me both pull, I'm very invested in it personally, and being able to sort of like pull away from just some of like the reality for like a fictional world is nice, but also I'm still getting to explore some of those same themes, just from a different light, that are so important to me right now. So I'm really enjoying that it's like a parallel. I mean, this show is about climate change and class, which are two very important things happening in the world right now.
Yeah, I guess what I missed the most is the movie was just so kinetic in terms of, once the plot started, it was just kind of driven. Like you're moving through the train, you're discovering a little tiny bit about each piece that they go through, or each section that they go through, more about the characters. And yes, if you want to see that kind of really blown out and super expanded, that's fine, and you're going to get a lot of that in the show. You're just going to lose that energy, that the kind of that Bong Joon-ho kind of driven energy. I think the show languishes a lot more. It has a lot more side plots going on already in the first 2 episodes. I won't mention what those are yet, because they might be spoilery, and they might not be. But some of those side plots, I'm just not really that interested in, to be honest. And the stuff that drove the first movie really has not started yet, at least in the series. That's possibly arguable. There's an undertone of what's to come, but it's definitely not manifesting itself in any of the plot and the action yet. So maybe it's just because we haven't got to the gay bathhouse car that I'm just really kind of I'm just a little bit bored at this moment. So, Brad, if you're interested in watching, I will watch it with you. I'm not gonna bail on the show. So maybe it'll get a little bit better for me, as it kind of heads toward the as we get deeper into the season.
Maybe, but you have full permission to bail off the train at any point, and I won't be upset with you.
Oh,
What I don't want to have happen is where you stay on the train just because I'm watching it, and every episode, Star Trek Picard, is.
I don't know.
Can you make that deal? Maybe.
Got me
We
there.
do that?
Got me there. Yeah, I should probably just totally bail out at the beginning, like other people do. So yeah, maybe that's what
I'm
I
not
do.
saying
I should. Do.
I'm not saying bail out at the beginning. I'm just saying if you choose to stay on the Snowpiercer train, you do so at your own risk. I just don't want it to become something you hate. So if you ever want to bail, don't.
I'm not at the hate stage. I'm not close to the hate stage yet. I'm just not. I'm like I said. I'm not as impressed with the story so far as I was with the movie. So.
We have a saying in our house, or not a saying, but I guess like a classification. We'll watch a show, and then at the end of it, we'll just kind of say, okay, is this a Will show? Is this a Scott show? Or is this an Us show? And we make those decisions because there have been some times where like I've watched a show and then like partway through, Scott's just like, this is too violent for me. I don't know why we're watching this. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is a Will show. Or he'll watch something and I'm just like, babe, I'm tapping out. Like you can watch it, and I'm like, I got my Switch. I can do stuff like that. And then there's something that we both like connect with, and we're like, all right, you're not allowed to get ahead on this one. We have to watch this one together. So I will say, in terms of this one, this has threaded the needle for both of us. This is an Us show. Scott tends to not like extreme violence in his stuff, like, you know, so he steers away from some genre stuff. And there's a couple of scenes in this that were a little close to that to him, but he was really gripped by the story, and he was really excited just to sort of see like whenever they would go to a new cart, he was like really or a new car in the train, like he was really excited, just like, oh, what are they going to find in there? What's the new discovery? So I do like that this is one where we both were able to find something that we liked just from different angles.
And I think I better hold my other comments till spoilers. So,
well, I was just going to say, I think we've reached the point where it's time to leave the non-spoiler cart and make the transition into the spoiler part of the train. So, Jim, Will, are you guys ready? Are you on board for spoilers?
Yeah, I think so.
I am all aboard.
Choo choo.
All right.
Spoilers for Snowpiercer, the series on TNT. Also, probably some spoilers from the movie, because I imagine some stuff may come up. At this point, we don't know that anything that happened in the movie is going to have anything to do with the series beyond it just, you know, being people on a snow train. But there could potentially be spoilers for both. If you haven't seen the movie, you don't want to be spoiled. Can't guarantee that won't be the case. So you may want to step away, come back after you see the film. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes of Snowpiercer, the series, and you care about your virtual innocence where the plot is concerned, this is your chance to bail off the train. We promise you won't flash freeze. But spoilers are fair game. Jim, let's go to you first, because you had mentioned you had a comment that was kind of burgeoning on spoiler territory. Where were you going with that?
Yeah, it's interesting, Brad. You and I had a very brief discussion today about, and actually, we all had this discussion on the thread, as whether this is a kind of a retelling of the story, or is this like a prequel to what we saw in the movie. And the more I think of it, like, it is still possible, I believe, that this could be a prequel to the movie. If you remember, the movie took place about 15 years after the train, you know, people had been on the train for 15 years. In this series, they've only been on the train for 7 years. Which, you know, a lot of shows go 7 seasons. Who knows? I mean, this could eventually lead up to be kind of a prequel. It's an interesting thing to think about. I don't think there's anything that's happened yet in the series that could preclude that from being the case. when we finally get to where this series is going. What do you guys think of that?
I was thinking about that too. And I was doing some reading today. I guess this is set in the year 2021, which is interesting. But also too, like characters from the movie, if this is 7 years before the film takes place, like I want to know where Tilda Swinton is. What is she up to? I want to know where Chris Evans is. What is he up to? Are we gonna like see them in the background of shots somewhere? Are we just gonna pretend like they don't exist? I almost wish we had a definitive answer as to what this was. And maybe it's out there, maybe I just haven't read it yet, but I feel like if this is a prequel series to the movie, then I'm gonna be watching it like I watch Better Call Saul, like waiting for Breaking Bad characters to show up. And if it's
Yeah.
not a prequel and I spend all this time like watching characters looking for connections, and then I find out later, oh no, it's just a reboot, sorry, I don't think that's gonna sit well for me.
I think
Yeah.
focus on it
I'm
as a
not saying it
reboot
has-
is the.
Good.
I think focusing on it as a reboot is probably the best way to go about it, because I did a little bit of reading and I keep hearing the word like reboot, not a prequel, but I don't know how much of that is just, one person put something out there and then it gets parroted across other things, So I didn't do enough reading for it to be definitive and firm. But I'm guessing it looks like it's a reboot, and that probably is the smartest decision anyway, because it lets them play in the setting and play in the space, but not have to be adherent with like setting up specific characters to be in specific locations by the end of the series. They can just tell this story. They already had to lean into some of the more Taily related stories, because when you think about Snowpiercer, you think about the people at the back of the train trying to push their way forward. Plus, that's the best like class metaphor in the whole thing. So of course we were going to go there. Of course we were going to have people fighting with like hammers and cars in these first couple of episodes, because that's what people remember from the movie. But at this point, they could probably, I don't want to say abandon, but they could veer away from that very heavily. We're in spoilers. The Back the Train Rebellion, 2 episodes in, has already calmed down. A lot of the major characters that were doing stuff there are either on ice or moved elsewhere. So this show now has a lot of breathing room to play in the other cars while still being cognizant of like kind of the class issues at the base of it. And that's pretty compelling to me. Like this can go any which way from here without us having to wonder when we're going to get back to like Chris Evans or Octavia Spencer.
So along those lines, I was actually just doing a little bit of research, and it looks like at the Screen Rant panel last year at Comic-Con in San Diego, Graham Manson, said, don't expect the new show to have anything to do with the film or the comics. They're not part of the same continuities. We are our own thing. So this does indeed, if that still is the case a year later, seem like it is a reboot in its own continuity. So maybe it's an alternate reality Snowpiercer.
It's just interesting that they would choose the time frame. You know what I mean? That's only 7 years after the train starts versus 16, and just makes you wonder, like, what is the purpose of that? Is that just arbitrary? They kind of spun a wheel and said, okay, it stopped at 7. We're gonna say 7 years, or is there something that ties into the plot? We don't know that. So it's, again,
I have a thought about that. And granted, my thought is, just a thought, but my thinking is like in the movie, right after 14 years or whatever it is, like the Tailies finally like get enough steam up to take over the train, right? They make a play for it. And so my thinking is, if they're looking at the longevity of a TV series and they're like, hey, we want 5 or 6 seasons out of this, maybe they're setting it back far enough so that like they've been on the train enough time that they can world build and establish, but then it gives them enough track to run on forward, build up to that point, right, where the events of the movie, happen. Even though it's not tied to the movie, it just gives them some room to run, I think.
Yeah, because in the movie they do mention that there were several. I'm sorry, Will. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's another kind of compelling thing that I think in terms of the time frame makes sense, and that's in the movie you had a lot of characters who had spent who didn't even remember what life was like before. Like that was like one of the plot elements. Like they vaguely remembered it was so far removed. Here, instead, we've got a character who, in the Daveed Diggs character, who is he's a young man, grand scheme of things. You know, he is not like an aged actor. You know, and he has to have been able to have been old enough to have been a detective in the real world, and also still be young enough to be the age that he is currently now. So that 6 years is enough to, like, I buy that. I buy that he was like a young detective, and 6 years later is who he is now. If it had been 15 years, they would have had to have cast someone dramatically different.
The only police detective in the world that made it on the train. But the other thing is, besides the timeline, like, what do you guys think of the one thing that didn't really impress me was the murder plot as a way. It seems it's not very interesting. It seems like more of a vehicle to get Daveed Diggs mingling with the other elements of the train and create tension maybe between him and the rest of the tailies. I just didn't really get into I'm not really getting into the whole murder mystery thing. I hope that ends quickly. I hope that's not the whole season. I just don't know. To me, it does a couple of things. It jumbles things up in that he's jumping from train to train. He's going from, he's appeared in, I don't know how many sections of the train already, ahead of, short of any kind of rebellion that gets through the train. But also, he, it takes away from the main thrust of at least what the movie was, which was, kind of the social injustice and the social struggle, which is still there. It's just pushed, it's relegated much more, I think, kind of to the background for me.
To the tail end?
To the tail end, yeah.
Yeah, I think they need a mechanism, right, for having the hero character of this series to come from the tail end of the train, but still be able to go to all the other different parts of the train and interact with all the different people on the train. And, if he were an engineer and they pulled him up because they lost an engineer or something, well, he's probably not going to be spending much time walking around the first class cars talking to people, right? Because he's an engineer. Go the fuck to the engine room. If he's a doctor, well, he's probably not going to be walking around cars. He's going to be staffing a medical ward car, right? Also, who wants a medical drama on a train? I don't. So making him a detective makes sense in that, crime of the week or, whatever, gives him a way of sort of checking the box for all of those things. And he has sort of the plot viscosity to grease the tracks and keep things rolling.
Yeah, and I'd even argue that I think we have seen a lot of the class stuff. And because he is in this outsider role, we're able to see him interacting with different elements of it. We've seen the tailies. We've seen the way the tailies interact with hospitality. We've seen the way they interact with the jackboots. We see the way they interact with the brakemen, who are like the police officers, not the jackboots are the military, and the brakemen are like the beat cops, so to speak, of this world. We've seen the way and granted it was brief, but we've seen the way the jackboots and the brakemen interact with each other, and that's not a super wonderful situation. We've seen the way the rich council interacts with hospitality. We've seen the way the engineers interact with each other. We've already seen what's happened to 3 different people who've been promoted out of the tail. I guess 4 in the Daveed Diggs himself. We've got Miles, who is just now being promoted up. We've got the detective's ex-wife, who I forget her name, who has moved up into like a polycule type relationship, and we also saw the guy that's working as like maintenance that used to be in the tail. So we've gotten and we were only able to see that because we got to follow Daveed Diggs' character through each of those different sections, and even the areas that we're not allowed to see because Daveed Diggs hasn't gotten there yet, we're able to see because the Jennifer Connelly character is exploring them. So between the two of them, we've pretty much seen everything except for like what the middle class looks like, and that's 2 episodes in out of a 20 episode order. So I think that we've got a lot of room to sort of play around with kind of the class structure here.
So there are 4 classes, right? There's, at least on the train, there's first, second, third, and the tailies.
I believe so.
At least 4 classes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That does seem to be the case. It
wasn't super clear. I think that was the case. Like, it wasn't clear whether the tailies were 3rd class also, or that was a separate class. But it seems like 3rd class has more of a lifestyle than advantages than the tailies themselves have.
Can we just talk a minute about the eye candy on this show? Would that be appropriate?
I was going to ask you about the shower scenes, Brad. Go for it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So some hotness going on this series. I was just looking through the cast list. Unfortunately, I did not find an answer, but one of the guys, the big ginger muscle bear dude that gets put in a drawer, that made me very
Not
sad.
the doctor.
We won't see him for. Not the doctor. We will get to the doctor. But the hot ginger muscle bear. I'm hoping we'll see him at some point. He's in suspended animation in a drawer for killing people. But he was way hot. And then the hot ginger bear doctor. They apparently have a thing for hot ginger bears. And this he's played by Happy Anderson. I've never seen in anything else, I don't believe. I don't know if you guys have, but definitely fun to see him on screen. And he plays the doctor of the train, or the corner of the train, or a mixture of both. I don't know, but I hope we get more of Mr. Happy Anderson here.
I'd like to see more of that the first guy you mentioned. The doctor, I don't know. I'm a little bit. He's kind of a strange character, a little bit shady, a lot shady. Who knows what's going on in that car? But I sense it's probably not going to turn out too good.
Well, we know one thing about what's happening in the car, because he's even so that we've seen 2 doctors so far, right? We've seen the one that you guys are talking about. He's actually, I think, almost more of like a prison guard than he is even a doctor, because his job is to put the people on suspended animation and just sort of like tend to them there. We got to see another doctor, like the lady who was helping with the autopsy, and she said, "Oh, I did one tour in the military as a medic, and now I can do all of this." Yeah, so yeah, absolutely, you're right. There is something shady going on there, because his job is basically to keep people in suspended animation, kind of robbed of their agency, robbed of their ability to interact with the outside world while put inside of a tiny box. So yeah, this definitely is about class, prison industrial complex.
There's a
all
huge
of that
power dynamic
going
on
well.
there. Yeah, huge power dynamic going on there. Hey,
we had a couple of questions. Power exchange.
Yeah, we had a couple questions. Eric in the chat says he's late to the party. If you've already mentioned it, I'll get the answer on the replay. But what does the show bring to the table that the movie doesn't? I think we've covered a lot of that, right? Basically, it expands the world and gives us a lot more of that world to kind of chew on and understand and kind of like immerse ourselves into. I think that's pretty much the gist of what. I mean, there are other things too, I'm sure, but I hope that answered your question, Eric.
And Will, this may be a question for you, but James says, forgive me if you've already mentioned it, latecomer, but is the show more faithful to the original comic than the movie?
Yeah, so the original comic had a basic story that mimicked some of the stuff that happened in the movie, but the movie was definitely an adaptation, and Bong Joon-ho really likes to tell the story of class, and so that got infused a lot, even more into like the way it appeared on film. And granted, I've only read the first of the 4 graphic novels. I have not read the other ones, so I don't know the different directions that it goes from there. So disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. But this is, while this definitely feels closer in tone and atmosphere to the show than the comic, it does also in some ways feel like its own thing. I was thinking about this example before, Brad, and this feels way more like, almost like something like She-Ra. Bear with me on this in terms of an adaptation, in that it takes some of the core elements and the core DNA, but it tells its own thing with those pieces. Like, it takes those Lego bricks apart and puts them back into a new thing that is its own thing while still being made of those same pieces. So yeah, I think that when and these the two questions from Eric and James actually are very closely linked. I think that, for me at least, each of those 3 scratches a different itch in terms of what type of story it tells and how it tells the story. I think the real advantage to this one is it's got some breathing room for us to play in some of those other cars, and to just to experience what the world is like when it's not the movie. You got to see some of the different cars, but it was all sort of in the context of, I'm in a death march to fight from one to the other. So you didn't get to play in the cars as much as you had to fight your way through them. And in this one, you're getting to see what life is like in those cars.
It's kind of like running through the grocery store aisles as opposed to, slowly walking and picking what you need. Will, I don't know if you know this, but we're on the edge of greatness, turning darkness to light. We're right beside you, ready to fight. Eric says stop. You had
We're
me
going to win
at
in the
She-Ra. I wondered where you were going, bringing
She-Ra.
the She-Ra reboot into this. And now I definitely can see that. And yeah, I mean, granted, this was a movie. Granted, this is a comic book. Some people are saying that, the TV series is like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. I don't know if that holds true. I think the show is trying to do a few things that kind of make it its own, while also trying to remain faithful to some of the main tenets of the source material. I look at this kind of like a Walking Dead in a way, right? Maybe that was a bad comparison to make, given its later seasons, but the first few seasons of The Walking Dead, even though they were based on a comic book, were fucking awesome. They were great. Then the show veered off and did all these other crazy things, and one of its actors ended up on this show, believe it or not, on Snowpiercer, the series. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with this sort of existing as his own thing in a different universe from the movie, in a different universe from the comics. But I think fans of both are probably going to tune into this, and they're probably excited to see certain things. And I just wonder how well the line betwixt fan service and function can be walked.
And it's especially hard because this is an adaptation of something that is very, very good. So you can't help but draw comparisons, and you can't help but, a show that has 20 episodes is going to need a little bit of room to make some missteps, to breathe. There's not a lot of shows that have the ability to do a 20 episode run and to be fucking flawless all the way through. I can name a couple, but I can't name more than a couple that have pulled off that feat. And so I think that it's very fair, and I don't begrudge anyone to do this, to have those flaws feel even more compounded when in your mind you're comparing it to this movie that was so fucking good by a filmmaker who is so fucking good. The comparisons are natural, the comparisons are normal, but I would say check this one out. I do think that there is some value here. This is, like I said, this is a solid B+ in that at the end of the year, sometimes people get those like really kind of like cute ideas to like put a television show into their movie top 10 list. I almost did that with Watchmen last year, to be fair. This is not one where that would be like an idea for me at the end of the year. This is a very good television show. But I also don't feel like it's anything necessarily revolutionary. You know, this isn't anything that is changing the game in any way, shape, or form, but it's playing the game very effectively. And most importantly, it's compelling me to want to sit down and do another revolution around this one.
All right. Well, guys, do we have any other aspects of Snowpiercer series we want to touch on before we get to some plugs, or are we ready to move forward?
Ready to move forward, but like I said, as we get further into the series, I think uh, I know, Brad, you and I have kind of a rule. We like to give a show at least like 4 episodes before we kind of, decide. I guess. Is it 5? Is it 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll definitely go at least that
It's
far.
5.
And I say we
It's
should
yeah.
definitely circle back. We should definitely circle back later on at some point, maybe after. It sounds like we're all going to watch at least the first season. So let's circle back and see if it maybe changed our views on the show at all as we get to the end.
I'd be down.
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay, cool.
Speaking to the idea of circling back and giving our views, Hamstrat Eric in the chat says, hopefully an MBP She-Ra podcast is in the future. Will Movie Bears podcast She-Ra Spectacular Special? What do you think? We could talk about the last season. It's recent memory.
Do you want to see me cry on stream? Do you really want to see me cry on stream? Because spoiler, spoiler alert for that episode when we review it. But I fucking cried watching portions of She-Ra of all damn things. So I mean, yeah, of course, I would 100% talk about that show. Yeah,
Will. Hey, Adora.
Hey, are you guys talking about? Is this a new She-Ra or the old She-Ra? Or what?
This is the new She-Ra. I love the old She-Ra, but we're talking about the new one at this moment.
Got it.
5 seasons on Netflix. Yeah.
Cool.
So, Hamster, we have not done our She-Ra Spectacular yet, but Jim has not seen the series. He saw the first couple episodes, but Will and I have both seen it, and maybe we can wrangle someone else up. I mean, Jim, you're welcome to join.
This is the one where the first few episodes are pretty rough, right? Is that the one we kind of watch? And I thought you were going to bail on it.
Yeah, for us, they were rough. They were divisive, though. If you really like the comedy, they were great. The comedy didn't work so well for me. The comedy is not my favorite aspect of this show, but it got way better along those lines. A few more episodes in, it kind of hit its stride. And it was really great. And it's awesome because I feel like this has just become a She-Ra plug section, but it's easily digestible.
Yeah.
Each episode is 20 minutes long, and it does some really cool things. So I don't know if you want to revisit and watch the whole series or anything.
This is a bonus. This is a bonus She-Ra section.
It's the first show I've watched that feels like Avatar or Legend of Korra since Avatar Legend of Korra. Just like the grand scope of the series is at that level.
Well, I mean, we did a Steven Universe Spectacular special several months back. Nothing wrong with doing a She-Ra episode, especially right now in quarantine. A lot of people are finding the series for the first time, and they're completing their first run through. So it could be a good time for that. So, Hamster, thank you for that idea. We appreciate it. All right, well, that's the plug section. Just kidding. Let's transition to plugs for real once more with feeling, and let's go to Will. Will, what have you got to plug or put on people's radar this week?
All right, so mine is technically a film festival, but it's one that you can watch right now or through July 20th. It's the Etheria Film Festival. So Etheria Film Festival is it's an LA-based film festival that is focuses on genre sci-fi, those types of films, but predominantly directed by women. And this year, of course, they had to not have their live event because, gestures widely at the world around us. So what they did instead was they curated a shorts program, 9 short films, and they put them together as one unit. So like you watch the Etheria Film Festival movie, and it has the 9 short films, and you can find it on Shudder.
I'm so sorry. Did you say it's called the Etheria Film Festival? As in Etheria, the planet She-Ra lives on?
You know what? I did not make the connection between the plugs until literally just now, but maybe that's why it is 100% on my brain.
You guys are in cahoots. You guys
But-
are in cahoots tonight, I swear.
we are, but it's on Shudder, and it's with shorts programs. They can be really hit or miss, right? Like sometimes you watch a shorts program and you're like, this one's really good, this one really sucks, you know. And at the end of it, you hopefully have a pretty good average. I at least liked all of these short films, and a few of them I really loved. It's 9 short films. Again, if you have a Shudder subscription, and I will also do a quick plug for Shudder. If you don't have a Shudder subscription, you should get one. It's probably one of the best like streaming channel add-ons that you can get right now. But not only that, you know, it's all genre films. Genre is a lot of fun, especially in short. You can get some really cool little sci-fi stories or Black Mirror-esque type stories. All female directors. And I did not know this until I was actually watching it this weekend. But one of my friends who is part of the board at AGLIF, which I do here in Austin, is also a filmmaker and made a short film last year, which we played at our festival and all of that. Well, I did not know that she had also submitted it to Etheria Film Festival and got curated into this. So little did I know, I get about halfway through and I see like, oh, I know that film. That's Bears Rebecca. Oh my God. Like that's the one we played that at English. I know her. Like that was just such an exciting moment, and more exciting for like kind of discovering it in the wild as opposed to like actively seeking it out. So I recommend it. Again, it's playing between June 19th, which is already passed, through July 20th on Shudder. It's the Etheria Film Festival 2020, and it's definitely worth checking out.
All right, excellent.
How can you go wrong? It's from She-Ra's home world.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, Will, thanks for putting that on the old radar. Jim, what have you got this week?
I randomly came across a documentary, so this is going to appeal to my fellow documentary lovers that are out there on Amazon Prime, of all places. This one's called Making Waves, The Art of Cinematic Sound. And I know it's kind of a long, boring title, but the movie is really good. Just like any good documentary, you'll learn something. You'll be moved by parts of this, like how sound. The whole thing is about how sound was used from the early on, from when we first got sound with movies, and even before then, when sound was used like in where they actually made sounds inside the movie theater to go along with what was playing on a silent screen, and how those two came together technically to make something that was kind of bigger than both parts, and made that much of an impact. And then how sound was, the technologies were the art and technology was evolved to some of the things we see now. But it's really great. It's called Making Waves, The Art of Cinematic Sound. It's only an hour and a half. It's on Amazon Prime. If you got Amazon Prime, you can go watch it for no more money. So check it out. A good documentary.
All right. Awesome. Well, the world needs more documentaries, according to you guys. And it sounds like this is probably a good one. Yeah. Jim, I know it's not your plug, and I know I came in halfway through it, but what was the name of the documentary you were watching yesterday that I got sucked into about Adam Lambert and Queen?
Oh yeah, I have to now I have to look it up. Thanks a lot. It caught me cold with that one. I don't remember the name, but it was a documentary about how Queen, after from the time that we sadly lost Freddie Mercury, an iconic rock god, singer, and leader of one of the biggest bands in the world, how they were kind of thinking about hanging it up until this magic convergence of them and a very bright young talent from the world of theater and through American Idol, of all places, came together and re-energized the band Queen. A lot of great concert footage in here, performance footage, as well as the story behind Adam Lambert and his, how it kind of all came together. I'm going to look up the title right now.
I just did. It's called The
okay.
Show Must Go On, the Queen and Adam Lambert story. And I
Yeah,
realized
that's even a
missed part
longer
of it.
title than the other plug.
I realized I missed part of it, but I really enjoyed what I saw. And I hadn't really heard Adam Lambert sing with Queen before. And so it was kind of fascinating to see that. And so I guess that's going to be my backhanded plug, because as documentaries go,
Yeah.
I had fun with it.
You should go back and watch the first half, because that was
plan to.
a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I plan to. And it's interesting. So I went down this like hole starting last night and going into today. I was watching Adam Lambert American Idol videos, which got me watching like Josh Grayson American Idol videos, which got me watching Clay Aiken American Idol videos, and suddenly I was like 24 again watching American Idol. And
it's 2 a.m.
American Idol was huge, and well, it was like, I don't know, 12:30 in the morning, but I was in my car today, and I was heading to my allergist, side story, and I was listening to What Do You Want From Me from Adam Lambert, and I guess I had it pretty loud. And this guy honks his horn, and I turn and look, and he's like thumbs upping me, like rocking out to the song. And I'm like, Adam Lambert fan, but like volume down, volume down, volume down, volume down. So anyway, thanks for having that documentary on yesterday when I walked in, because I enjoyed it, as did my road lane namer, apparently.
That's a good song. Like, I've been known to bust that one out of karaoke a couple times.
What do you want to eat?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
What do you want to eat?
All right. Well, we're long in the tooth. I think we're gonna shut this mofo down. Just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who joined us in the live chat. Thank you to everyone who joined us or will join us on digital tape delay, whether you joined us live or on delay. If you want to chat with us about movies in between episodes, you certainly have the ability to do so. Jim, where can people interact with you?
You can find me on Twitter, interact with me on Twitter at JJP@West, or find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico, which is right here. Chat me up. I'm pretty talkative. I promise I won't leave you hanging anytime.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and definitely check out the spelling of Pugliafico if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. You can see that literally laid out for you on the screen.
Spelled like it sounds.
P-O-O-L
Pugliafico.
Puliafico. I remember because I had to put it on the marriage certificate, so that was an important detail not to miss. Will, how can people interact with you?
All right. So right now, if you want to see me shitpost, you can go to Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. If you want to see me post an endless stream of like political rants, I'm on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. And if you want to find out what indie bullshit movie I've liked recently, check out letterboxd.com and search for William Lindis. Those are the 3 places you can find me.
All right.
Windy.
Excellent.
Windy. Indie bullshit movies is not a thing. Come on.
I mean, it's not for me, but I do also know that, like, just because I like a movie where nothing happens and people just talk to each other doesn't mean that everyone else does.
Yeah. I made a movie about a gay potato. It's awesome. Anyway, right.
5 stars.
We're gonna get in trouble now. We're going to get in trouble now.
Happy Pride. All right. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. You can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. Same thing on Letterboxd. Have a wonderful week. Have a great weekend. If it's been 5 years since we recorded this, hope it's been a great 5 years if you're listening now relative to when we recorded. And we will see you all next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.